Hello there, you are warmly welcome to another exciting edition of Corruption Watch podcast. I call this one the international edition because we have panelists drawn from various countries in Africa. I would like them to introduce themselves before we go on.
Thank you so much. I'm Cece Monanimne. I'm from Liberia. I'm an activist of women's and children's rights, quality education, inclusive system, and a positive society.
My guest from Gambia.
All right. Thank you so much, Ella. My name is Dawda Cham. I am also into volunteer activities. I do a lot of youth activism and fighting against corruption in this country included.
And then last but not least.
Hello, good morning from Nigeria. I am Taiwo Olawayemi. I'm quite active in the civic engagement space, empowering young people, especially students and other young professionals, to be excellent at what they do and so that they can contribute excellently to nation building.
Very impressive. My name is Emmanuela Dadulo. I'm a journalist. I worked with Parliamentary Network Africa. I've also worked with Y Times. It's a campus newspaper that focuses on corruption issues and other student issues from the Ghana Institute of Journalism. This episode focuses on the issues of corruption and how it affects the youth, particularly youth in Africa, youth in West Africa, and how we can prescribe solutions to some of these corruption issues. So first of all, here in Ghana, because we are in COVID times, a lot of frontline organizations who are in charge of this COVID situation try to take advantage of the whole COVID situation to amass wealth for themselves. For instance, I went to a hospital to take a test. I go there and then I met an official who told me that I would have to present a doctor's note to be able to do the test. But I can help you if you can pay a little amount to me so that I get you the doctor's reports. It's forged for you so that you'll be able to have that test. That's the kind of petty corruption or corrupt situations that I have experienced. I want to find out from you in your various countries, have you experienced some of these things? I'll start with Cece.
The COVID testing, if we are to go out of the country, we are to carry a certificate. So when we reach to where we are to do the testing, because everyone wants a certificate, those guys at the entrance will request that you pay them before they can give you a certificate. If you have an issue, before some journalists even come to take the news, the burning issues that is affecting you, that is affecting the society, before a journalist even come to take the news, as if you are not a newsmaker, they will ask that you compensate them before they air your story. And the compensation will not be from a willingly gesture. It will be what they request, as if you are paying them to air your story. So these are some of the issues I have experienced, and it is almost on a normal basis in my country.
That's quite interesting and sad as well. Now, how is it like getting a passport in your country?
How did you know I was going to talk about that? That was just a coincidence. It was just the first thing I was, because I witnessed it myself when I actually applied for my first passport. Actually, the price, that is the ECOWAS passport, the price is $3,060. And then I needed it urgently at the time because I was preparing to go for some studies and so on, which did not actually work out. But this guy said, like, if I want my passport within a span of 3 days, I should give him 5,000 instead of the normal $3,060. So it was just crazy. But I actually refused because, one, I did not want to be part of bribe, because it is said the one who receives and the one who gives bribe are all part of the game. So yeah. I refused to actually give that 5,000. I had to wait, though I really needed it urgently. But I eventually paid the $3,060, and I explained my situation to the immigration officers who are inside to actually try and get my passport within 3 days, which was actually possible. But in this country, to be frank, almost every day we witness corruption in this country, in our government, even in the private sector. For instance, in the government, let me talk about the police. Like every day, like in the open, you see policemen and women receiving bribes from people in the street, like openly. They're not even scared. You can see it with your eyes. Like they just receive it. Like they will just fold their hands like this, and then the policeman will come to the window, and then the thing is given to him or her, and then they release the cars. So corruption is a problem in this country. A major one is the issue of rosewoods business in this country. Our sub-region here, the Casamas and the Gambia, we have lots of these very big trees that people use for timber, and then also to get some woods out of to transport or export to the outside world, the Asian countries. So there was a ban that was actually put on the exportation of rosewood, but until today in our country, we have people who are transporting or exporting these rosewoods. But you will be surprised to know that these Chinese are being aided by our own government officials who actually sign these papers. And according to a report that came out recently by the Environmental Investigation Agency, over 500 million US dollars is lost as part of this trade.
That's quite
Yeah.
sad. How is it like with the police as far as corruption in Nigeria is concerned?
Hi, thank you very much, Dawda and Cece. I see that corruption is truly a pervasive issue in Africa, and it's similar across board from Sierra Leone to South Africa to Ghana to Liberia to Nigeria. So these are very similar issues, from obtaining passports to our police system, police and security system, to the business sector, to governance. These are similar issues that we experience. And in Nigeria, it's practically similar. You find that young people are usually the tools for corrupt practices. And I think that's largely because of the extent of education and exposure that these people have. Poverty also is a critical factor, because many people feel that if there is not much they can lose, say that they can get something little in exchange that will last them for a few days, a few months. And because they don't see the big picture, they go on with the practices. In Nigeria, for example, we've had an outrage by young people late last year against the government due to the corrupt practices of the police. And that resulted in the NSAS protest all over Nigeria. It was actually surprising for Nigerians across the board and even the national community to see that Nigerian youth could even stand up against the government, because this isn't something that happens on a regular basis. The police who are supposed to cater to the lives and property of people are found to kill people when people refuse to give them money, to give them bribes. They turn out to be thieves among the people. These are people who are supposed to protect us. And it was actually a beautiful sight to behold when we had young people from Nigeria across the board utilizing social media. These were people who had not even met themselves physically, but by the power of technology, utilizing social media, Twitter particularly, they were able to stand up and fight against the Nigerian government and against the Nigerian police. So I believe that if we can have such action translated to other sectors where corruption is pervasive, we will actually be a step closer to the change that we so desire in our respective countries and indeed in Africa.
Great contributions. I think that the issues are quite similar in all our countries. But as young people, how does corruption affect our daily lives, our goals, our aspirations? I'll start with Dawda.
I think as young people, corruption actually affects us in lots of ways. Like I said, the example that I gave, if I study outside and come back to this country, whatever I'll be doing, I will be doing to actually improve the lives and livelihoods of the Gambians. But at that instance, I needed a passport very quickly. But because of this corrupt individual, it has to take me, some days for me to get it. So because I refuse to give him a bribe. So corruption has also hindered our progress as a nation. Let's say in the Gambia here, the amount of money that is actually dedicated to the youth and sport ministry is somehow small to sponsor some of our youth activities. But let's look at the government or the office of the president. They spend millions of dollars on just food and some things that are not even necessary when other sectors are there which really need that money. For instance, the health sector. If you go to our hospitals right now, I mean, people are lying down. They do not have the proper medications that they need. People will go to hospitals and they will be given always they will be given their receipts to go to the pharmacies to actually buy some of these medicines or medications at a very high cost. Right now, I work in a laboratory, a medical laboratory, but the tests that we actually conduct are very expensive. But that is not really what we want because we are not a government entity and we cannot
So
be
would you
giving.
say that it kind of affects the poverty ratio in the country, or
Exactly.
things?
You see people who cannot really afford this. I mean, many a times our CEO will give people some of these tests on free basis because that's what he does. Like he will pay not from the covers of the company because he is a shareholder in the company. He doesn't have the right to always give these tests for free, but he will pay from his own pocket because he knows that the average Gambian cannot afford some of these things. So it's not just the young people who are affected, but the whole country is affected, and poverty in this country is increasing at a higher rate than before. So I think we are all affected in one way or the other, and it's high time we actually started fighting. And right now we have some youth organization and civil society organization who are trying very well to actually fight this corruption that is actually prevailing in this country. Also, we have seen journalists really contributing in our country so hard to actually expose some of these individuals or government individuals who are into corruption. Because recently we've had a journalist who did his investigation. He's an investigative journalist about this fisheries ministry, because we have a Chinese company in this country who are actually fishing with very powerful trawlers, preventing our Gambian brothers from catching fish in our waters because they have the canoes that they have cannot go in the deep sea to fish. So these Chinese will go deep sea and then fish all our fish. Now, if you go to our markets, you have no fish, or even the available, it is very costly that an average Gambian cannot afford.
In Liberia, Cece, a central bank scandal, how has it affected the lives and aspirations, the goals of the youth, especially because an ex-president's son is involved, and you know how the power play situation is, nothing can be done to him and all that. How is it affecting the Liberian youth?
It has affected us negatively, very negatively. And I tell you, like Dawda said, it's not only the youth, it is affecting the whole society. Currently, because of that saga, we are faced with a deficit situation. Coming from money laundering, coming from scarcity of Liberian dollars on market, and you find out that while it's true that the Liberian dollar is scarce on market, but the things prices are still the same on market. So people who find it difficult to get what they're supposed to get from their wages or salaries are finding it difficult to get ends meet. And I tell you, no investment or investor will want to come to a country that is not stable, a country without an accurate record, a country with constant corruption news. No institution, no investor will want to come to invest. In any country without foreign investment will not go. So like I was saying, corruption have caused the young people to lose trust. Today, many young people have no interest in taking their monies to bank. If the central bank, who is considered to be the governing bank, is involved in a corrupt allegation, no one have trust again to actions with bank. Corruption have caused instability in our society. Today, people no longer trust public institutions. And because corruptions are into public institutions, you find out that people who go to those institutions, and public institutions being institutions with at least affordable amount for people to go to, people go there without learning what they're supposed to learn. You graduate from institution, you pay for grades, and you didn't graduate with what what you're supposed to do. At the end of the day, you go into the society, it becomes a burden. You are given job, you don't perform in those jobs. You don't make a right judgment. So constantly the corrupt attitude continues to grow. Even if you are not the perpetrator, someone who is the perpetrator because you lack the right judgment, because you went to a corrupt institution where standards weren't taken so that you will acquire perfect education, you bow to that. This is how we are affected. The entire Central Bank saga have made us to lose hope as young people, and it is putting us into poverty as young people. Witchcraft, and I tell you, young people are not the only victims. They are also perpetrators of this corruption because their role models are into it. I give you a practical example with what is currently into Liberia. Our former defense minister was allegedly charged for embezzlement before the special senatorial elections. This ex-individual went to the senatorial elections and won the elections. After the elections, the Supreme Court gave a verdict that he is convicted of embezzlement. Guess the discouraging part? The same young people take to media institutions that they are willing to pay what he has embezzled, the money he has embezzled, they are willing to pay. Can you imagine? So young people, because the entire system is corrupt, so they are also getting involved into the corruption. They are perpetrators and they are victims. So we are losing trust. We are honestly losing trust in our country. And it is really hurting us, and we don't know where to turn ourselves. That's part of us being anti-corruption activists. We are still finding it very challenging.
It looks like it's sort of a hopeless situation, but hopefully we'll be able to, find ways to solve some of these problems. But Taiwo, it looks like corruption is deeply rooted in our country, and it's impossible to fight. Why is it so difficult why do you think it's very difficult to fight corruption, especially among the youth?
Oh my, this is an age-long question for so many of us who are passionate about the development of our nations and indeed Africa. And I think that it seems so difficult because corruption is a result of the erosion of values. And I think values are a critical fabric of a human life, from family to your participation in school, in religious activities, to the larger society. Values are very critical to the fabric of human life. So when, as young people from birth, we are born into that system, and the family is such that also encourages or engenders corrupt practices, it's so difficult to overcome that challenge. It's so difficult to curb corruption. We do not have many positive role models of persons who are full of integrity and who are aggressive against corruption. The people who are most affected by this are the people who do not have access to quality education, those people who are out of school, those people who are unemployed, those people who are seeking a means of livelihood. They are the ones they're always looking left, right, and center. What can the government do for me? If this government who ought to do a lot for me cannot even do what it ought to do when elected into office, why should I stand for what's right? When the government who has in its possession the resources required to make life better for the people are not doing what they are supposed to do. The fight can only be won when we have more people standing up aggressively against corruption. And the fact that not many people have this understanding of the bigger picture, of the bigger view, that it is only in our unity and solidarity that we can win this war, because not many people have that big picture, the fight becomes very difficult to win.
Dawda, she talked about role models not setting a good example for the youth to follow. Do you also think that it is as a result of the youth benefiting from corruption that it's difficult to fight?
Like Cece mentioned, I think young people are both perpetrators, but also they are people who are actually being victims. This is what I tell people. The only way we can fight corruption is holding ourselves accountable. If everyone is able to hold him or herself accountable. So young people are actually contributing to corruption. And that is why the fight against corruption would be very, very difficult here until we are all accountable.
Let's talk about some of the ways corruption was fought in the past. In Ghana, I know we had in 2006, for instance, we had the whistleblower law, where the law protects whoever gives information about corrupt practice. We've had the TRAJ, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. But in your countries, in the past, how was corruption fought, and how is it going now? I think I'll start with Cece on this one.
Well, for my country, what the past president did was to set an institution called Anti-Corruption Commission. So this institution is to track all other corrupt news and make sure those perpetrators are sent to court to face justice. But on the sad note, this commission is the same commission we are corrupt. So this institution was meant for a good, but it's not helping us. Our executives are stronger than our judiciary in Africa.
How? What are the ways of fighting corruption that has been successful in the past in Nigeria?
The Nigerian government had instituted initiatives like the ICP's International Corrupt Practices Commission, the EFCC Economic Financial Crimes Commission, and other initiatives in different spheres and sectors of the economy to fight corruption in those sectors. Okay. I know that in NAFDAC, for example, NAFDAC is the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control. The Director General of NAFDAC did a great deal of job. Professor Dora Akunyili, she was a pharmacist, and she did a great deal of job in fighting fake drugs in the Nigerian drug markets. She did a great job because she was someone who was valiant. She had so many opposition. She had so many assassination attempts over her life just because she wanted to do what was right for the country. Aside her, we have had other initiatives. For example, Budget. Budget is a civil society organization in Nigeria that checked the Nigerian government in the budget that they submit to the National Assembly. Budget tracks all the budgets submitted to the National Assembly and follows up on the set projects for which the money is supposed to be used for. So what they do is to publish those budgets, break down the budget analysis so that the average Nigerian can understand what such budgets mean, and they also track the implementation of such budgets. And in one of their works, they identified that one of the youth organizations in northern Nigeria, for which a particular budget was supposed to be used for, they found out that the organization was even non-existent.
Great. Interesting discussions. I hope that we are all enjoying the discussions, and I hope that our listeners are also enjoying the discussions. Now, let's do a short trivia. We will look at the RTI. We'll look at questions surrounding corruption. First of all, which African country was the first to, pass the RTI into law? Anyone?
That is an interesting one. I think that should be Zimbabwe.
Any one of you with another answer? Okay, sure. Let's proceed. In what years did your countries pass the RTI? Let's start with Nigeria. When did Nigeria pass the RTI? Any one of us can guess. Not only Taiwo. Any one of us can guess.
I think 2011.
2011. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. What about your country? When did Liberia pass the RTI? Can anyone guess when Liberia passed the RTI?
2014.
2010.
Okay. I'll reveal the answers at the end of the show. What about Gambia? When did Gambia pass the RTI?
I think 2012.
2012. Yes. Okay. Anyone with another answer?
2010.
2010. Okay. Let's keep going. What's the position of Liberia on the 2020 Corruption Perception Index?
124. 124.
124. Anyone else? Anyone else with another answer? Another alternative? Liberia. Okay, what about Nigeria? What's the position of Nigeria on the Corruption Perception Index?
Okay, Nigeria is 149 out of the 180 countries assessed by Transparency International as at 2020.
Do you think that she's right or wrong? We'll find out at the end of the show anyway. So let's do the last country, Gambia. No, that's not the last country. We'll come to Ghana as well. 94. Okay, 94. Anyone else? Is there any alternative answer? And what about Ghana? Does anyone know about Ghana? I'm trying to recruit myself from this one. So what about Ghana? Does anyone know of the rank of Ghana?
Not sure. Maybe 135. Not sure.
Okay, anyone else?
I said
80. Okay. Yeah, I think you are close. You are closer than Taiwo, but we'll find out at the end of the show. Now let's move back to the podcast discussions. Okay, now a lot of us or all of us have various reasons why we are fighting corruption or what has gingered us to start the fight against corruption. I'm going to start with Taiwo because you seem I don't want to call it emotional, but that's the only word I want to use right now about the whole corruption thing. What sparked your zeal to start fighting corruption?
It's only the right thing to do. It's only the right thing to do to stand up against corruption, because there is more to gain in fighting corruption than standing for it. And corruption is primarily the reason why Africa is this backward. Corruption has pervaded our systems such that it has crippled us, and we can only aspire to that future that we so desire, but we cannot get there because corruption has crippled us. It has crippled our leadership system. It has crippled our governance. It has crippled the economy. It has crippled the educational system. So it's only the right thing to do to stand up against corruption. Gladly, as a graduate, I will not want to stay in Nigeria for my postgraduate studies. I want to go abroad because that's where things work. That's where things are better. The systems seem more effective there. If the systems were effective here in Nigeria, of course, by all means, I would want to stay. But in the last 1 year, many of my friends have left Nigeria for further studies. And every time I speak with them, they tell me, Taiwo, when are you writing your graduate examinations? Taiwo, you can't afford to stay in Nigeria. Taiwo, Nigeria isn't the place for any wonderful person who wants to make things happen. Taiwo, if you want to change things, you need to leave. Corruption is the reason why we are saying these things. Corruption is why we're experiencing brain drain in the health sector. We have thousands of doctors leaving Nigeria in particular every year because they're all in search of greener pastures. If not for corruption, the budget allocated to healthcare would be increased, one, and that money would be used for what it's budgeted. We would have improved structures in our hospitals, in the primary healthcare centers. We would have a heavy investment in indigenous production of drugs. COVID wouldn't cripple our healthcare system because I'm so glad we are so fortunate to find here in Africa that the impact of COVID isn't as deadly as experienced in Europe and other places. We are just so fortunate because our healthcare system is so dilapidated to the point that oh my God, the average African cannot access quality healthcare. And every time we institute initiatives and solutions, there's the NHIS scheme, the National Health Insurance Scheme. If that were effectively implemented, the average African should be able to access quality health care. But that's not the case. A friend of mine was just saying that the average citizen is just one disease away from poverty. The middle class people who seem to be getting by are just one disease away from poverty. How much more those living below the poverty line? So corruption is the mother of all of these challenges that we have in various sectors, and it is only right to stand against it.
Okay. Dawda, how are you fighting corruption in your own way? In your own little way, how are you fighting corruption in your country?
Yeah, thank you so much. I know I don't have a lot of powers to change so many things, but
Okay.
I am trying everything I could just to fight against corruption here. Because when I first started, I didn't know what to exactly do. So there is this organization here called the Gambia Participates, who are doing tremendously well to fight corruption in this country. So I've had a training with them, a capacity building training on how we as young people can fight corruption in this country. So the only powers that I have is talk. I mean, to talk. Talk to people when I'm invited on shows like on TV or on radios. I would say the little that I can because I feel like we really need sensitization. So far so good. This is what I've been doing, but also I've been working with some other young people to actually sensitize the people. So we cannot fight anybody. All that we can do is talk. So we will be talking and talking and talking. So, but what I always say when I am talking to people is myself. I have to be accountable. Like I cannot be standing out there telling people corruption is bad and all of that. When myself I am into corruption underneath, people don't see
Yes.
me, and that is what is happening. That is what most. That is what is happening in most African countries. We'll be out there talking about corruption. Corruption is this and that. Our country is failing. Our health system is dilapidated. Our education system is crap, and all of that. But when we, the ones who are fighting against this, are the very ones who are underneath trying to be involved in some of these corrupt activities. And I hope I'll have more people on my side so that we can fight corruption together. Because I believe that when we are united, we will be able to achieve more than when I am doing it alone. So this
Okay.
is what I've been doing, and I hope that we will get something fruitful out of it at the end of the day when the
Okay.
mindset would have been changed. Because that is baseline. I mean, if we change our mindsets and our attitude, then these problems, not only corruption that Africa is facing, would actually be things of the past.
All right. Cece, how is it at your end? How are you fighting corruption in your own little way in Liberia?
One of the ways I'm fighting corruption is to make myself accountable. Yes. Sometimes we go to a public center and of course we are to get into a queue. But we find people leaving the queue and going in front their fellow colleagues. With that, if I'm present, I say I know it is not right. Though we are called all types of names, somebody will tell you say Jesus mother, somebody will tell you say Holy Mary. These are names that they normally call some of us when we are doing these things. But we are not deterred for it. Another way is to say it out. We use radio stations, we use our Facebook platforms. Since indeed our government normally use their Facebook platforms, so our Facebook platforms is effective as it relates to fighting corruption. So we spread out the messages and get right-minded people to work with. We are with other anti-corruption institutions that is a civil society institution that I am co-founder of that track things that are not right as it relates to government expenditure. We request for budget transparency on a daily basis. So these are ways we fight corruption. But key on the issue is to keep talking, keep talking, keep talking, keep talking. If we will say two sentences at the end of the second sentence, we tell them right is right. Even in the next generation, the meaning of right will never be changed. So keep doing what is right and stop doing what is wrong.
For me, as a journalist, what I do is that I make sure that every story that has any corruption, anything that smells of corruption of it, I write about it. And as they say, the pen is mightier than the sword. I can't fight people, so the only thing I can do is to write about it. And I make sure that I write very unbiased. I write both sides of the story so that the people themselves will decide whether this is good for us or not. And through that, I think I'm fighting it. Now let's move on. How would you want to extend the fight against corruption to reach other people to so that we can know what we are doing? I mean, Taiwo, I'll start with you again.
Like I said earlier, one person cannot fight corruption. 10 of us cannot. 100 of us cannot. We need as many people as we can get. So if I have the opportunity to fight corruption on a larger scale than I'm currently doing, what I will do better is to work with other young people who are aggressively passionate about fighting corruption. And we have a good number of them across the board in Nigeria and in Africa. So one way to do it is to intensify and consolidate our efforts. Yes, so that we are not working independently, we're working in solidarity. And one way to also do this better is to reach those people who are the actual tools for corrupt practices. Young people like us who have not had the opportunity for quality education, young people like us who are ignorant about the beautiful future of Africa that we see. Poverty and unemployment are two critical strongholds over people. Those two are what make corruption thrive in our communities. And of course, utilizing technology, very, very important. Utilizing the avenues that technology affords us, TV, social media, radio, so that people, no matter their languages, no matter their strata in the community, they can all identify this fight that we are fighting, this fight that is a fight for everybody, because it's not for me, it's not for my family, it's for the people in my country, it's for generations yet unborn.
How would you extend or expand the fight against corruption if you are given the chance?
I think this is one of the most important questions or contributions that we could make in this podcast. Like Taiwo said, in fighting corruption, there is one thing that is very much fundamental, that is uniting people and then moving with a single voice. We cannot fight corruption alone, and like she said, not 10 people can fight this. It's a fight for everyone. And the first thing that, if I am given the platform, the first thing I would talk about or promote is self-accountability. Let's be accountable to ourselves. I mean, if you're not accountable to yourself, you cannot fight corruption. You have to be accountable to yourself first. So what I would do is rigorous civic education, because in our country here, one thing we lack is civic education. People do not know. I mean, a lot of people are actually not aware of some of these things, because a larger percentage of our populace are uneducated, are illiterate. They do not know some of these things. So like the Gambia participate, what they are doing in this country, that is an organization that is fighting against corruption. They've tried to actually translate or transliterate our budget into all sort of languages. Our new constitution that came up also was actually translated so that people know. But also the budget, they go all the way in the remote villages to tell people how our budgets are being spent and all of that. This is what we need in the country, so that people know, so that any corruption act that is done, people will be aware. But also another thing that we can do is starting everything from the grassroots, because most people who are in these institutions who are involved in corruption come from homes. They went to schools and all of that. If we are taught from grassroots, from our schools, that corruption is bad, let us have it in our curriculum. Let people be aware of what corruption is doing to our continent. So from there, that young generation will grow up with that mindset that anything that does not belong to you, that belongs to the state, you should not take it.
Great. Interesting discussions. Before I got my passports, I've always had there's been rumors of corruption at the passport centers. I know that some of the claims are true, but there was this passport center I went to from the beginning to the very last end. There was no one asked me for money, for bribe or anything. It was just a smooth process. So I think this is one of the encouraging moments in the fight against corruption that I have seen. That the fact that we are talking about it and then people are changing their ways. And of course, the discouraging moments I told you from the beginning, where I told you about my issue with COVID-19 test. But I want to find out from you, in your various countries, what are some of your encouraging or discouraging moments you've had to encounter as far as the fight against corruption is concerned?
All right. So one experience I had was when I was preparing for my UTME, that's the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, the examination that high school graduates write to proceed to the university.
Is that the same as JAM?
Yes, that's JAM. Yes,
Okay.
yes, like JAM. Yes. Okay. So that exam, you find that many people usually have to pay certain special centers to either write for them or to provide them answers during the examination. I remember that I had stayed at home 1 year after my secondary school before the university. So in that 1 year, I attended a tutorial center where I did a great deal of preparation for my examination. When I had to write the exam, in the exam hall, as expected, the examiner was already telling people, if you want help, pay me so and so that we can be attended to. And I found people paying the invigilator. Yes, I found people being given answers to the exam, being given answers left, right, and center. Oh my God. But I
in the
literally was
exam
right
hall, in the full
in the
glare of
exam
everybody.
hall. Yes, in the exam hall. And
Wow, that's quite
this was
serious.
before it became computerized, because it's now computerized, at least in Nigeria. My time I wrote the paper-based exam. I don't know what the situation is now with the computerized exam. So while I was trying to write on my own, the invigilator came to me, don't you think you should pay me? What do you think you're writing? Don't you think you should pay me? I told him, sir, I'm fine. The exam, I think the exam is for 3 hours or so. I had about 1 hour or 45 minutes to the end of the exam. Every other person had left the exam hall. I think I was the only one. If I wasn't the only one, maybe 2 or 3 of us were left the exam hall. Of course, it was expected. They had answers provided to them. So all they had to do was to shade or write down the answers. I was still racking my brain. Oh my God, I need to gain admission pharmacy. So I was busy racking my head, and the man stopped me before time. I was so annoyed because I knew that I was solving the questions by myself. The time wasn't even up. I was in the right. I just had to plead, sir, please give me 10, 20 minutes. It didn't even accept. I just had to submit. But I'm glad that I had a good score at the end of the day and I gained admission.
Great.
That instance is one of many where people who choose to stand for what is right can get sidelined, can get mistreated, and sometimes they may not even be as lucky as I was. I was lucky enough to get a good score and gain my admission on merit. Some other persons, in the event of wanting to stand for what's right, they get sidelined, and people who are unable to stay the long course can get converted to the other side and say, oh, standing for the right doesn't pay me. It hasn't been advantageous to me. What's the essence? Another discouraging moment amongst young people I have seen, young people who run civil society organizations. You know that a number of them usually apply for grants to support their work. It's usually disappointing, disheartening to find that these young people who are supposed to be at the forefront of change making get those grants, but do not use the money for what they receive the money for. So you find that some of them convert the money to personal use instead of using the money, the grants, to advance the causes of the organization. Another one I saw, a friend shared on his status, is regarding graduate exam applications. He shared how a school in Canada or so mentioned that they would blacklist Nigeria because some of the applicants were plagiarizing essays of some other persons. Corruption is not only in the big things, it's also in the little things. You're supposed to write an exam yourself. You're supposed to write a paper yourself. Why not learn from someone who has done it before so that you can do it well on your own? But you find that these people just copy and paste the hard work of some other person. If young people cannot stand on their own for little things like this, how much more when we get entrusted higher responsibilities?
Let me get the last one from you, Dawda.
So an encouraging moment I had was when I was traveling to up country. So normally we have these police stops in this on the highway. So when a driver comes, they try to find every fault to get some money from you. But fortunately for our driver on that day, he had everything intact. He doesn't need to pay any bribes. So when he got to this stop, and there was this policeman. Unfortunately, both the discouraging and encouraging encounters with police men and women, because in our country, the most common type of bribe here or corruption is when policemen will stop you and take some money from you, even if you don't have any fault. So this driver, everything was intact, and the policeman was like in our local language, can you just leave something for us here? Let's say we buy attire. I don't know whether you have attire, this black green tea that people actually drink here. So the driver was like, no, I don't have any money on me. I cannot give you. And at the end of the day, even if I do that, that is corruption. I would be bribing you. I'm not supposed to do that. I was like, wow. So even the drivers are even aware of some of these things. And not many drivers will do that. This driver was exceptional. I don't know where he got that courage from.
Great, great. Interesting discussions from all of us. And I hope that we've been able to learn something from each other. I'm glad we've had this discussion. Now, I know that we are all itching to get the answers to the trivia. So let's dig right into it. The first question was the first country to pass the RTI. That is Angola in 2002, and then Zimbabwe in 2002 as well. I also asked the year in which your countries passed the RTI. Okay, so in Ghana, it was passed in 2019. Yeah, yes, 2019, 2 years ago. In Liberia, it was passed in 2010. In Nigeria, it was passed in 2011. That was just 1 year after Liberia passed theirs. But in Gambia, it's quite unfortunate that as of 2021, it has still not been passed. But the good news is that in 2019, it was tabled before the National Assembly for discussions. It's going through reviews. And so we hope that in some few years, probably this year, it will be passed. They'll be done with all the reviews, and then they'll pass it into law. Now let's look at the countries and their ranks as far as the corruption perception index is concerned. I don't know if I should start with the West. So Nigeria has the West. They are at the 149 position. Then we have Liberia with 137. So they are the 137th country out of 180. Then we have Gambia, 102nd, 102. Then I'm proud that my country tops it all. No. So, though it's not so good, but at least it tops the four countries. We had the 75th position. I'm glad that we've all been able to do this, and I hope that the discussion will not end here. It will continue in our various countries, and then together we can fight corruption. But before I go, I'd just like to end with a quote from one of Nigeria's sons. He's called Chuba Okadibo. He was the former president of the National Assembly. He says that if you are emotionally attached to your country or to your tribe, ethnic group, or political leaning to the point where truth and justice become secondary considerations, you are a liability to mankind. I'm happy to be your host. My name is Emmanuel Adadublo, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Till we meet again next time. This is Corruption Watch Podcast. Bye-bye.